Hey, it's Ted McGrath. Welcome to today's show where I'm going to talk about MicroStrategy. Strategy. I keep calling it micro, but it's strategy. And I'm going to talk about an interview that I watched recently with Saylor and how genius it is what he's doing with the preferred stock. And I'm going to break down the performance of the preferred stock. As you know, there's three different kinds of preferred stock. And I'm going to share with you why Saylor calls it an indestructible balance sheet. And Saylor is so genius. You watch a lot of times where he talks about things just like, hey, the sky's blue, the water's wet. But at the end of the day, he's saying just incredibly powerful things. So I decided I would break down one of his interviews into a slideshow today to show just how powerful the actual preferred stock offerings are. All right. So I'm going to jump in. Again, not financial advice, not tax advice, not legal advice, but let's jump into my recent breakdown of one of Michael Saylor's interviews. So here's the basic idea. It's a genius move. I'm breaking this down. I like to do everything in a fifth grade language here. And I'm simply breaking this down to talk about the super smart way he just got more Bitcoin without borrowing money the usual way. And this is a really key component about what he's doing with preferred stock. He's not borrowing money. And it's very powerful as I break it down today. And as I was listening to him the other day, I'm like, wow, what they are really doing with strategy in the marketplace with these different types of offerings with their preferred stock as well as their common shares. But particularly what they're doing with their preferred stock is going to attract a lot of institutional investors, and it's going to blow the competition away. And it already is. And I'm going to give you data to show you why today. So he did something called 3 IPOs of preferred stock. IPO is an initial public offering. And he made special deals where people give his company money. And the cool thing with this, in return for the money they give him, they get paid a little bit extra every year forever. So this is not like a bond, although it has similar features with a bond. Typically with a bond, you might have a bond which has like a 4-year, 5-year period, and then the person gets their actual principal back. With this is not the case. It's completely different. So let's take a look at Strike. Now, I know they just came out with Stride, and that's the big news in the marketplace. But if you look at the two other preferred stocks that Saylor came out with, and you look at this and you look at the performance of them so far, the performance is outrageous. And you compare it to other preferred stocks, which I'll do in a moment, it's not even close. So you look at Strike, it started at $80 per share, and now it's $100 per share. That's a 24% gain, and it pays investors 8% yearly dividend. So when you look at each one of these, they're each a little bit different. I've gone through these before, but I haven't shown you the performance of them over the last several months. And now you're looking at the performance of these types of preferred stocks compared to traditional preferred stocks in the marketplace, which I'll show you in a moment. Now, Strike is very attractive because it pays 8% per year. And then there's an option to convert into common shares of the stock in the future when the stock hits a certain stock price. So that's what makes it attractive to people who want the fixed income, but they want the potential upside. Then you have, compared to other stocks, as you look at this performance, look here, if you look at, let's go back to Strike, 24% gain on Strike. And now you look at Strife, which is just a fixed income. There's no option to convert it into common shares in the future. But you look at this started at $85 per share. And now it's $98 per share. That's a 16% gain. So when you look at the gains on these preferred stocks, it's sick. And you see why it's actually attracting investors who are looking at it and going, wow, this seems very, very interesting. Like institutional investors are coming in, and you look at Strife and it pays 10% yearly dividend. So it's attracting additional money into the marketplace. Now, when you compare these, and we know that we have Stride as well. I'm not going to get into that. They just came out with they're raising $1 billion through Stride with the IPO that just came out, and Stride's going to pay approximately 10% as well. And so when you look at this and you compare these 3 preferred stocks that Strategy has, and then you compare their preferred stocks to other preferred stocks recently in the marketplace that have dropped around 3 to 5%, but Strike and Strife went up, that's what makes this a really, really smart move by Saylor. So it's completely fascinating to see the comparison and why Strategy has such a competitive edge in the marketplace, and why these preferred stocks are attracting the institutional investors who are used to getting maybe 5% when they're doing some type of investment like this, or 6%. And with Strategy, they're getting 10, 11% returns on it, which is extraordinary. So here's the really smart move on this that most people don't understand. And until I really listened to Saylor yesterday, I was like, wow, in his interview, when he's talking, he's really talking about something that is extraordinary. And he says, like, they get this money where investors give them $1 billion. And it's kind of like if your grandma said, gave you $1,000 and said, just give me a little bit every year forever. That's it. Just give me a little bit every year forever. And that's what Saylor's actually doing. So these preferred stocks are like, great, give me $1 billion and we'll give you a little bit back every year forever. But they get to take those $1 billion and buy Bitcoin, and Bitcoin sits on the freaking balance sheet there. And it's not sitting there as debt. And they can then get to pay this back every single year. And there's no year, there's no like at the end of 4 years, they need to give the $1 billion back. They don't. They just keep paying this thing out year after year, 10%, 10%, 10%. And why this gets super interesting. You know what? Oh, can't post comments to some destinations. I don't think people are allowed in the comment box. Let me try and remove this. In any case, something just, anyway, I wanted to fix that, but we'll fix it later. So what's cool is you look at this and you go, like, he's sitting there with literally what he calls an indestructible balance sheet. So he takes the US dollars raised and uses them to buy Bitcoin. And that's what his investors want him to do. And so he calls it an indestructible balance sheet. That's what he said on a recent interview that he did on a news channel, because there's no big loans, there's no debt, it's just a huge stack of Bitcoin that he gets to pay out little by little by little every single year, which is insanely cool, right? So, so that's phenomenal in the marketplace when you actually look at this, which is fascinating. And then finally, the investors win. So you're looking at the investors where they earn 4% more than normal. So if they're going to go do a normal deal like this, they might get 5 or 6%, and now they're getting 10%. And you look at the trading volume on Strike and Strife, it's $31 million a day on Strike. On Strife, it's $23 million a day. It's 60 times more volume than other preferred stocks, which is incredibly interesting and cool, right? So you've got that. And then only 450 Bitcoins are sold per day is what Saylor was saying. So when you look at this and you look at the amount of Bitcoin that are sold per day, that's $45 to $50 million of Bitcoin purchases per day. And the ETFs and the treasury buyers are scooping it all up, which is wild, right? So there's not that much Bitcoin that's being issued per day or sold per day. And you look at the amount of, amount is $45 to $50 million. So you look at this like, wow, this is crazy, right? Like the supply is so low right now. And so we are in for a huge, huge ride on this, and a huge just a boom for MSTR over the next 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. Now, obviously the stock's very volatile, so it's not financial advice. And we could have, 30, 40, 50% swings up, or 100% swings up and 100% swings down. But when you look at what's really happening with what MSTR is doing, it's a complete game changer of what they're doing with preferred stock. And so, Wall Street, you got even the big banks and the US governments are now saying, yep, Bitcoin is legit. You got Saylor, who has a $13 million price prediction. And he says Bitcoin could grow 29% per year for the next 21 years. And so we'd be looking from what, $106,000 Bitcoin now to $13 million Bitcoin by 2045. And in his recent interview, Saylor says that he's like, he thinks he's even more bullish than that now, but he's not going to say anything. He's just going to keep it at his current prediction, but he feels more bullish than he has been in the past. So Bitcoin versus everything. If you look over the last 4.5 years, you got Bitcoin at 57% return. You got big tech at a 28% return. You got the S&P 500 at a 14% return, and you got real estate at a 7% return, and bonds about -4%. So you look at the difference, like, Bitcoin's double what big tech is. It's 4 times what the S&P 500 is. It's 8 times what real estate is, and it doesn't even compare to the bond market. So if you're an investor, an institutional investor, and you're looking to put your money into a different resource or a different place rather than just traditional bonds, you got these institutional investors looking at this preferred stock. Why? Because it's paying 400 or 500 basis points more than traditional bonds in the marketplace. And preferred stock is not a bond, but it has similar features to a bond. But the difference is it's perpetual, and it just keeps paying out the 10% every year. Strife, 10% every year. Every year it keeps going and going and going. Strike, 8% every year. It keeps going and going and going. And Stride, 10% every year. It keeps going and going and going. So the genius of these preferred stocks is like, it's next level with what he's doing, and it's going to change. It's just changing the marketplace, and more companies are catching on. You look at the number of companies out there that have Bitcoin treasuries, Bitcoin in their treasury. We're looking at over 100 companies now. If you compare this to 3-4 years ago, with the number of companies that had Bitcoin as part of their reserve, it was minuscule. And look how fast this is growing, and it continues to grow even faster. So it's pretty interesting to see what's happening in the marketplace right now. If you're just joining us, I'm going to give you a quick recap on what we went over. Bitcoin is basically crushing everything. Saylor figured out how to get more out of it without debt. And so that's the big thing with these preferred stocks. And I'll just back it up to show a few of you who just joined us. I'm going to do a quick recap here. The preferred stock, the IPOs he has on these preferred stock, what makes them special is he's literally, like, the balance sheet is becoming so strong for strategy now because they're going out and getting $1 billion for these products and more. And they buy Bitcoin and they put it on their balance sheet, and it's not a debt play. It's not where they're going to do a convertible note where they're going and saying, hey, loan us the money and then we'll pay you back this interest rate, and then you can convert it later into stock per se, or you could get your money back. In this case, with Strife and Strike, they just perpetually pay out, and Stride 10% every year forever. They could pay it. So the balance sheet becomes so strong, it's not even funny. And that's really what these preferred stock plays that he's doing are genius. And in his interview recently, where Saylor was talking about this, he was talking in his interview how, like, this really adds to the premium with what he's doing, because they're not taking on debt like bonds. They're not issuing the common shares. They're doing preferred. And it's just an incredible way to build up the balance sheet, stack it with Bitcoin, and nobody can compete. Nobody can compete. So these products are brilliant. You got Strike, look, the 24% gain if you're just joining us. We got Strife with a 16% gain, which is the other preferred stock. These are both paying 8% or 10%. We know we just added Stride to the mix with this. And then I was saying, compare this to other stocks, other preferred stocks that have dropped 3 to 5% during the same period, and Strife and Strike went up. So that's what makes this smart. If you're just joining us, I'm just recapping because I went through this. The beauty of these preferred stocks is really simple. He just doesn't have to pay back the principal, guys. Somebody gives him $1 billion and he just slices off a piece every year. And here's the thing. If he's slicing off 10% every year, look at this slide here. If he's slicing off 10% every year, and you look at Bitcoin over the last 4.5 years, it's done 57% over the last 4.5 years. And he's taking in $1 billion through this preferred stock, and all he's slicing off is 10% a year. And Bitcoin's going up 57% a year. Okay, great. Let's just say Bitcoin goes up on average, like Saylor says, here, on average, let's just go to his prediction here, 29% a year. So just think of this. If he's paying out 10% on the preferred stock, but Bitcoin on average over the next 20 years goes up 29% a year, pay out 10% and make 30% on your Bitcoin stack. I mean, come on, right? And that's not even including if strategy continues to trade at a premium, right? So I really like this concept. To really understand this concept of what he's doing, like just do the simple math with me, okay? Strife, Strike, and Stride, let's just call them 10% a year, all right? Strike's a little bit less. So you bring in $1 billion. It's not debt. You got to then, you're paying that $1 billion out 10% every year back to your shareholders. But if Bitcoin just goes up on average 29% a year for the next 20 years, you're paying out 10% and your Bitcoin stack is doing 29%. How is this company in any danger? How? And that's not including if strategy continues to trade at a premium, which it is. So the moves here are like, the world has not woken up yet to what Saylor's actually doing. And it's just a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant strategy of what he's doing. I mean, this whole preferred stock move, I think, is more brilliant than anything that he's done. We know he's going to continue to tap the ATM, but God, look at where we're going. And the other thing is, the reason why strategy is going to continue to pay at a premium, in my opinion, is because they continue to be aggressive. That's what we want. The reason strategy gained traction early on is because they were the first mover in the marketplace. Over the years, we've gained confidence in what strategy is doing. The leadership has stuck with their game plan from 2020 to 2025. He continues to do what he says he's going to do, and he continues to be aggressive, and you want him to be aggressive. When you look at other Bitcoin treasury companies, when you look at it, something like Mara's NAV premium is very low right now. So they're not being as aggressive as a strategy is being. Metaplanet is being very aggressive right now, and you see their NAV premium is high. So we want strategy to continue to be aggressive. We want them to continue to do moves like they're doing every single week and buying Bitcoin every single week. And we want them to continue to use the products that he has created in the marketplace, which is the Stride, the Strife, the Strike, and also the common shares and the convertible notes. And so you have all these 5 different ways. And the question is, what's he going to come out with next? And as he said in the interview, because what I just broke down in this presentation was an interview that Saylor did, and I'm breaking down his words, were basically the concept of what he said in the slideshow I just did. And what he's basically saying is we are building an indestructible balance sheet. And the idea that strategy is over leverage is not even close in the same ballpark of even being close to over leverage, because they're not. They're not. And these preferred stocks do not create a situation where they are over leveraged. So, and you look at the convertible debt that they have compared to the value of their Bitcoin, it's so low. So you'd have to even look at like Bitcoin would have to drop down to 13,000 or 10,000 or 11,000 or 12,000 for you to even have a consideration that strategy as a company would be in some kind of trouble. And the question is, do you think Bitcoin's going to go back down to 13,000 or 12,000? I don't think so. So now, what does that mean for, as a stockholder, for us or me, I'll say, because I'm not going to give financial advice on this channel, but basically, do we still have to be aware of the ups and downs? 100%. But the whole point of what I'm sharing is what he's doing with these financial products in the marketplace to continue to raise capital, to put it into Bitcoin, and to continue to boost the NAV premium, where the stock actually trades at a premium to its Bitcoin holdings. What he continues to do is brilliant. And his whole idea of getting more Bitcoin per share is the goal of what he's doing. And institutions are loving it. Common shareholders are loving it. Wall Street's waking up to it, and nobody has yet figured out how to value strategy. And pretty soon, at the end of June, as Q2 comes to an end, that's March, April, May. We have January, February, March. We came to an end in April, May, June. So in about 23 days, June will come to an end, and we'll be at the end of the second quarter. And with Bitcoin, I suspect will be over 110, 112,000 at that point. And so the unrealized gains that Strategy is going to report on their balance sheet is going to be ridiculous. We're talking billions and billions and billions and billions and billions. And I think at that point, based on just standard Wall Street paying attention to the numbers of gains, even though we all know along the way that they continue to add Bitcoin to the balance sheet and they continue to be a indestructible balance sheet that they're growing, Wall Street will start to take notice. Other people start to take notice and go, wow, these billions of dollars of gains, what's going on? And then at that point, they will eventually be voted on to the S&P 500, and you'll have an automatic buy going over and over and over again, where billions and billions of dollars will be pouring into Strategy over the years. And people who hold the S&P 500 in their portfolio, in their 401ks, will indirectly be owning Strategy, as well as directly owning Strategy and indirectly owning Bitcoin as a result. So this is pretty cool, pretty amazing stuff, and I just love what Saylor's doing. Now, keeping that in mind as we go into the next 9 months or 7 months of the year, and we see Bitcoin move up, which I suspect it will, and we see Strategy move up, which I suspect it will. The big question is what will happen in October, November, and December. Will we go up and then crash down? And it is a very real scenario that we could go up and crash down. So I'm always thinking about that as I'm making my choices and I'm looking at my portfolio of like, great, let's pay attention. Let's see what happens. History doesn't always repeat itself, but, Strategy moves and it's volatile. And that's why I love the stock, because it goes way up. And then when it goes down, it's gut wrenching. You're like, oh my God, so at what point do you do what you want to do that's best for your own point of view and your own family and your own portfolio? That's something you have to decide, and we all have to decide for ourselves. But I'll be watching it closely. I'll be reporting on it and checking in with you guys. And it's a lot of fun. So if you missed this, go back and watch it, because I went through the preferred stocks. So just to recap, Strategy, Saylor gave an interview on the news. He basically said we have an indestructible balance sheet. When he's doing these IPOs with preferred stock, which pays 10% in perpetuity, it just keeps paying. So unlike a bond, where a bond pays for a fixed period of time, and then you give somebody their $1 billion back, they give $1 billion, Strategy buys Bitcoin, and they just pay 10% year after year after year, and it can go on forever. And so when you look at the strength of what's happening with Strategy, and they're paying out 10%, and just think that Bitcoin over the last 4.5 years has gone up by 57%. So if the Bitcoin just goes up by 29% over the next 20 years, and they're paying out 10% on their preferreds, do you think that's a winning strategy just with Bitcoin returns? 10%, 29% gain. I'll pay out 10% all day long to get a 29% gain. And then if Strategy continues to trade at a premium, you're looking at a completely different universe. So Saylor will continue to be aggressive. He will continue to buy more Bitcoin. He'll continue to use these financial products, and he will continue to crush it in the marketplace, and nobody will even come close. That's the story. So well done, Michael Saylor. Keep going. And always a piece of safety as one who owns Strategy. This stock moves like wildfire, and when it goes up, you're riding the rocket ship up, and when it goes down, you're incinerating on the way down. So you just have to look at, not financial advice, but one conceptually, theoretically, just needs to look at this and be smart about what they're doing and knowing their time horizons in this, okay? I believe holding Bitcoin and Strategy over the next 4 or 5 years is just a slam dunk. Holding it in the short term, depending on when one buys in, is always a risky thing, because if you bought in at 380 or 400, it could zoom up to 800, 1,000 this year, and it could crash down below 400. And that is a very, very real scenario. So there you have it. Hope it serves you. You guys are amazing. Have a great rest of the day. Hope this serves you. I'm going to end the stream, and since I stream on StreamYard, your comments that you're leaving right now, which are so great, they don't show up on the YouTube channel. So if you would go to the YouTube channel and just leave some comments and like and subscribe and share, that would really help. And it'd be a lot of fun. Okay. You guys are amazing. I'll see you soon on the other side.